Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and welcome to the 21st episode of AWS Primer with Jyoti. And today, Jyoti is going to talk about elastic block storage. Right, Jyoti?
Right, Brijesh.
Yes. So take it over.
Okay. So, hi everyone. Today we'll talk about the various options which we have for storage in AWS. So, previously we had covered S3. Today we'll talk about EBS, and then I'll give you a difference between all the storage types. So, mainly we have got three storage types: EBS, S3, and EFS. Okay. EFS we haven't covered. I'll see if I can cover that in upcoming sessions. But even that is also used for storage. Okay. So let me just start the slide. Oh, sorry. What is it that I'm doing? Sorry. F5 is what I need to press. Okay. Yeah, guys. So let's get started. So this is our agenda. So before I actually start with the theory of EBS, some key terms I'll let you know, because those terms I'll be using throughout this session. Then we'll understand what is EBS and the different types of EBS we have, and finally we'll have a distinction between all the storage options which we have in AWS, from S3, EBS to EFS, so that you know when to use which service. Okay. Then we'll talk about EBS snapshot, and then finally a lab. Okay. So this session is a very small session. We'll cover entire thing in this one session. Okay. So some terms, like when we say IOPS, what exactly we mean by IOPS, and why I'm discussing these terms, because later in the session we'll be talking about type of EBS volume. Okay. And when to choose which type depends upon these parameters. Okay. So for example, if you are having an application where you want a lot of input output operations, okay, so that time the EBS volume which you will choose would be different. Okay. So IOPS refers to the input output operation which you perform per second. Then there is a throughput. Okay. So what do we mean by throughput? It is the amount of data which is transferred from or to the storage device. So for example, from EC2 to EBS, or from EBS to EC2. Okay. Then snapshot. What exactly we mean by snapshot? It's like taking image through a camera. Like when you take a photograph, what you're doing, you're taking a snapshot. So it's a point in time copy of data. At that time when you were taking the photograph of the person, whatever was the state, that is the state you are copying. Okay. And also I'll tell you how incremental snapshots are taken in EBS. Okay. And why do we want to take snapshot? Because your EBS, they are tied to a availability zone. For example, there is a region, and in region there are three availability zone. So your EBS is tied to one availability zone only. Okay. So now if you want to have a similar data in another availability zone, okay, so what you can do, you can take a snapshot of the EBS and then migrate it to a different availability zone or a different region. Okay. I see something on the chat. Okay. Yeah. And finally, a mount point. Okay. What exactly we mean by mount point? Because in the lab, I'm going to do mounting. So it's like you have your hard disk, right? And then you have your operating system. So in operating system, how do you refer your devices, right? C drive, D drive. So this is what you call mounting. So you're not directly referring to the hard disk. You are, whatever you are saving, for you the file system is okay. C, in C there is program files, under program files there is another folder. Okay. So this is what we mean by mounting. So the mount point is where the volume is located in the file system tree. Kind of you are giving a reference, like, okay, whatever you want to do on the hard disk, these are the points, right? This is the drive, it's D drive, E drive, F drive. Okay. So whatever you'll be saving in those drive, it would be ultimately being saved in your secondary storage device. Yeah. So coming over to our main topic. Okay. EBS. right? So what is EBS? Elastic block storage. That means using this service, you are able to store data in the equal size of the blocks, right? In S3, if you remember, there was no concept of blocks. You were storing the data exactly as an object, right? And some of the use cases of EBS, like where we want to use EBS, right? For example, you want to do some frequent updates, right? So would you want to have storage option as your S3 or EBS? So for frequent updates, you can go for EBS, which is directly attached to your EC2 instance. Okay. Same way, throughput intensive application. If there's an application wherein you have to constantly read the disk. Okay. And finally, yes, like for EC2 instance, what you can do is you can attach the EBS volume to your EC2 instance and you're good to go. Now, there are different types of EBS volumes, and they are categorized onto two ways. One is your solid state drive, and the second one is your hard disk. Okay, so under solid state, you have general purpose SSD. See, these are just names. Okay, you don't have to remember the names. You should know, okay, for if you have to perform basic operation. Okay, so what is the type of EBS volume you'll choose? You'll go for general purpose SSD. Okay, if you need a high performance, right, in that case, what you are going to use, you are going to use provisioned IOPS. As the name suggests, input output operation would be really fast in these things. Okay, then you have hard disk drives. So even though they are categorized into two, throughput optimized, remember the terms which I was telling you, like how do you define the performance of your EBS volume, either based on throughput or IOPS. Okay, so what kind of a requirement you have, based on that you'll go and select those options. So I'll show you where do you see this option onto the management console so that you can form a relation. So just a second.
Jyoti, I have a question.
Yes, Brajesh.
So in storage, in the storage world, we have the concept of file level storage and block level storage. So is it true that S3 supports file level storage, and through EBS you can achieve block level storage?
Brajesh, you have to explain me a little bit more on this. Like,
okay, so while we are storing information, storing data, in storage devices in data centers, for example, you know, like you have Facebook data center, and there are these huge storage racks. If you see pictures, you can see, you know, mountains and mountains of storage volumes there. So what you call as you know, storage area network. So in that you have, so there also the storage is provisioned into in different ways. One of the ways of implementing storage is essentially file level storage, where you can store it in the form of individual files. Each file has its own attributes. Each file can be of an independent size, okay, of an independent volume. On the other side, you have something called as block level storage, where the data is classified or grouped in blocks of particular sizes, equally sized blocks. So while you were talking about EBS, you did mention equal size blocks. So that triggered the thought, maybe it is, so I don't know if it relates to this thing or not, but it is just a thing that flashed in my head from my prior experience with data storage. So anyways, I'll dig upon this a little more, and maybe we can share thoughts and notes later.
Okay. Though, yes, when we say EBS, the way the data is stored. So, for example, you have a file, right? So they are divided into a equal size block, and each block would have a reference of the next block. Okay. But in S3, it's not a block. It's you're storing. That's why it is called as object storage. You are directly storing your complete object. Okay.
And that is stored in the form of a file, right?
Yes, that's
in
stored
file
in the
format. Okay, so yeah, so okay, so
okay.
got it now. Yeah.
And another advantage with S3 is, for example, uh, uh, EBS, whatever is stored in EBS, you cannot access directly, right? The
Right.
EBS is accessed only through the AWS services, right?
Mhm.
But S3, you can access it through internet. So I'll just give you a link of that file, which I have stored on S3, and you can access it through internet.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so it's pretty much what I was talking about. All right. Okay. Thank you.
So let me just show you, like, where do you get that option? Yeah. So do you see this page wherein there's a add storage, right? So this is your root volume or a boot volume, which means that your operating system is stored here, right? So if I want to add extra volume or extra storage, if I want, so what I'll go ahead and I'll do, add new volume, right? And now you'll be charged for these things. Okay. And the type which I was telling you, see, these are the types. So you have general purpose, provision, IOPS. So when to select what, it would again depend upon your application. And EBS volume, you can use it for lot, other than storing just file, you can use EBS for your databases as well. Okay, remember I was giving you an example, like if you want to do multiple read and write onto the databases, right, onto a disk. So what you can do is you can have your EBS, and on that EBS you can have your database. Okay, so you select it from here. Okay, yeah, so these are your 5 categories, and they have a different cost also, right? It's not that all the 5 6 they would have same cost, they have varying cost. Okay, so ensure when you are practicing, you go ahead and delete these volumes which you have added to your EC2 instance. Okay, now since we have studied S3 and EBS already, so let's understand what is the difference and what is the use case, like when you would go for S3 or when you go for EBS or elastic file system. So whenever you want high performance storage, okay, and that too attached to a single instance, that time you'll go for EBS. But if you want a file system which needs to be shared across multiple EC2 instances, okay, in that case you'll choose EFS. Okay, so whenever you have to share between 2 3 uh, application, so that time go for your EBS. You have to ensure about the concurrency and dirty reads, all those stuff. Okay, and S3 you'll choose. One way to remember when to go for S3 is, uh, in case if you want to access anything directly through internet using HTTP or HTTPS protocol, so you can go for S3. And another scenario is like you want to with EBS or EFS, what happens is when you terminate your system, they tend to be deleted as well. So though there is an option, you can select and select like whether you want to delete on termination or not. But with S3, there is no such thing, which is like if you delete your EC2 instance, your S3 would also get deleted. Okay, and also you can store object directly. And there are various S3 options. Remember, we had talked about S3 Glacier, S3 storage. Then we had studied about S3 infrequent access, wherein you're not sure whether how frequently you are going to use your data. If it so, in that case, we choose a option S3 infrequent, wherein your Amazon would figure out using its machine learning algorithm whether the Amazon needs to move your data from S3 infrequent access to S3 standard or Glacier. So S3 Glacier is used for those data which you access it in once in a year or once in a 10-year kind of thing. For example, old songs, right? So the T series, they are using S3 Glaciers for storing the songs which they have recorded. Okay, yeah. So another concept about EBS is the snapshot. Okay, so how does a, sorry for this hazy picture, I got this at the end moment. So what happens, for example, you have your data, right, and we know we are storing in the form of a block. Okay, so for example, initially when we started, we had block A, B, C. Okay, even C was it like this in blue only. Okay, this was the first snapshot we took. And where are these snapshot taken? Like the snapshot which you take of EBS, they are stored in S3. Okay, so this was my first snapshot, the original snapshot. Now somebody went ahead and made some update. Because of that, there was update in this C box. So from blue, it converted to say green, okay, or C dash. So now when you go ahead and take the snapshot, the what EBS does or what AWS does, it only creates the snapshot of the change block. Do you see this snapshot 2? So snapshot 1 was the original when all the three were blue. Okay. So when I took first snapshot, it had A, B, C. Okay. Now I made some changes to the file. The file became C dash. Okay. So I went ahead and took another snapshot. So this time only out of A, B, C, the difference, the one which got changed, is kept in the snapshot too. Okay. Now person went ahead and made some more update. And now there's another two blocks, D and E. And you went ahead and took the snapshot. So what would happen? The third snapshot would have only D and E. So what we say in EBS, the snapshots which we take, they are incremental in nature. Okay. And if you tend to delete the snapshot, okay, so AWS manages that part and it ensures that now snapshot 2 has A and B, which was not here. Okay, so that doesn't mean that if you delete snapshot 1, you would only have C. Amazon would migrate this to snapshot 2 and it would have your A, B, C dash in this snapshot. Okay, and where are these snapshots stored? In S3. And why we are storing in S3, you won't get to know, like in S3 in which region it got saved, that is managed by AWS. But why we are using S3 for snapshot? Because you know S3 is not that costly. Okay. Yeah. I see something on chat. Yes, Gagan, will come to it later. Okay, so today it's like very basic session. Don't want to confuse others. Okay, so let me just quickly revise what we have studied and then we'll move to the lab part. Yeah, so we studied about IOPS and throughput. These are the two parameters which help us to decide which EBS volume I need to take. Okay, if you have an application where you are doing a lot of input output operations, then the volume which you would choose would be different for those operation wherein you are actually transferring data to and from the devices. Okay, then snapshot, it's your copy of the data, and where we take the snapshot, we take AWS takes the snapshot of your data in S3, and that is incremental in nature. Okay, and finally a mount point. So why do we need a mount point? Because your EBS is considered this as your hard disk, okay, which is not part of your operating system. So how do you map, like does you as a user, you'll figure out, okay, which part of hard drive is associated to which file system in your operating system. So for that you need to do mounting. Okay, yeah, so these are some of the use cases where EBS volumes are used, the types, differences. Okay, so simple. If you want to share data across multiple EC2 instance, EFS. If you want a volume which is directly attached to your single EC2 instance, EBS. And S3, it is not tied to your EC2 instance, etc. And you can leverage S3 for storing data which you want to access through HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Okay, and in S3 also there are various types. Okay, and based on the type you choose, you are charged accordingly. Okay, so for example, in case of Glacier, your storage charge is very less, but your retrieval charge is more. Okay, but in case of S3 standard, your storage would be more, but retrieval would be less, because your standard means you are going to frequently access your S3 buckets. Yeah, this was all about the snapshot. Okay, now let's go ahead and do a small lab. So what exactly I'm going to do in a lab is I'll create two EC2 instance, and I'll create one EBS volume and attach to one of the EC2 instance. So at a time, your EBS can be attached to only one EC2 instance, and your EBS is availability zone specific. Okay, so I'll tell you what exactly mean by availability zone specific or a region specific thing. Okay, so I'll add some file into that EBS volume. Okay, once done, I'll take a snapshot, which is like I'm taking a copy of that hard disk. Okay, so using that copy, I'll create a new volume and then attach it to my second instance. Okay. Okay, so let me go to EC2 instance. Any questions, guys, till now? Okay, I'll take that as no, but I see something in the chat. Okay, how is it useful for testers? That's a good question. So how is it useful for tester? I didn't think about this. How? So it's just about knowing the storage type. Okay. You should know your architecture of your application, right? And for example, yes, one thing which I can think about here is, for example, your EBS was being used for storing data, right? And you want to create another region. Okay, for example, for testing only, you want to create another region. So do you want to create a data again, or you want to reuse it, right? So with knowing these concepts of snapshot, etc., yes, you can tell your developer or DevOps that please, the EBS volume which is attached to your EC2 instance, can they just quickly create a snapshot for that, and then using that snapshot you can create a new volume and attach it to the EC2 instance which has been created in a new region. So that's one use case which I can think of for EBS volume. Okay. Then what else I see? And let me think what else I can be as a tester can leverage using knowing these storage type. Again, I'm just guessing, probably CV, right? The regression test cases, right? Or your application, it grows, and your test cases, the number of test cases which you write, and they also keep increasing. So either what you do, you store those cases or those Excel file in some shared drive, right? And you tend to forget where it was stored. So probably you can have one S3 bucket and upload all your test cases there. And if somebody wants to access those test cases, like if somebody is sitting on in US and you are in India, okay, and if we had shared that in some drive, I had to go ahead and share and give permission. But now with S3, you can just give that person a URL of your S3 bucket, and he or she can see the test cases which are written. So you can use S3, I'm sorry, as a repo also.
Also, Jyoti, maybe a case where you are using your storage for, as the backend or the database in your application itself. So there will be test cases or conditions or situations where you might have to test this out as well. Okay, because if it is the product database, then the storage component of it becomes very essential to be tested, especially from a from a usage pattern perspective. So what is the usage? What is the consumption of your storage space? With everything, when it moves to cloud, it has a different uh, you know meaning, because you're paying for it, right? So it becomes important from that perspective also, from a business criticality perspective also. Now, that is one thing that I can think of. Now, as I was giving you an example of the work that we did in data storage, we had to always uh, keep track of how much storage were we actually consuming with each type, which each data type that we were trying to store and we were experimenting with, which meant that the provisioning totally dependent on the type of data that we were storing. For example, if you are storing just Outlook data files, then the
Mhm.
provisioning would be different as compared to storing media files. So, when you think of such concepts, you realize that, that certain types of data are supported only with certain type of storage. So
Mhm.
like I was talking about block level storage and file level storage, right? So that
Mhm.
also depends, and that's why from a testing perspective, it becomes important that you are aware of these concepts so that you can fit in your cases or your tests as the situation may be. Uh, that's one clear situation that I can tell you, and it applies very much in case of you know um, uh, companies like Netflix, where the use of database is very heavy in terms of storing media files. Okay,
Mhm.
you have these movies and stuff. It is stored
Yeah.
somewhere, right?
Mhm.
And it has these storages that are created on cloud right now because nothing is
Mhm.
on premise. Earlier, back in the day when the cloud concept was not there, you had storage in the form of either tape, which is physical tape. You have seen your in the olden days, you might have seen a video cassette, which we
Mhm.
used to play in video
Mhm.
in the VCR or VCP or whatever we had. And you
Mhm.
you had those big magnetic tapes where the movie would be stored.
Mhm.
And similarly, you had audio cassettes. I mean, this
Mhm.
generation would not have seen it, but back in the day, it was there where you had these magnetic tapes storing those media files. So
Mhm.
tape has always traditionally been good for media storage
Mhm.
because of the longevity, number one, and number
Mhm.
two is because it is easier to access through tape. So
Mhm.
before the whole concept of cloud and everything, even YouTube back in the day used to store all the files in the form of magnetic tapes. Okay,
Mhm.
there were tons and tons of magnetic tapes where all of this was stored, and they were stored in the storage racks in the data centers that you see. Okay, but now the whole thing has switched over, and with a lot of these, you know, companies producing a lot of media files,
Mhm.
especially if you look at the film production studios, for example, Universal Studios, which makes a lot of movies. Okay, where do they store all
Mhm.
their movies? Okay, it's not okay. Yeah, physically, when the movie is shot, you may have the reels or something like that. But when it is to be made available to people on TV or on your OTT platforms, then what
Mhm.
happens?
Mhm.
From where do they access it? And that's where the cloud infrastructure comes into play. And
Mhm.
and AWS has been a pioneer in terms of that. Okay, they provided basic infrastructure to a lot of these such providers. And Netflix is one prime example. Uh, then there are many other players now in the market. Okay, Universal Studios I spoke about, they are also one of the good examples. Disney, okay,
Mhm.
Disney is huge in terms of media creation and media
Mhm.
storage, and I think they also rely on AWS for their cloud infrastructure, if I am correct. It is either AWS or GCP. I'm not sure which one, but mostly I think it is AWS. So, this is a real use case of where you can test. or which is helpful for testers to know. Okay, so just thought I'd share this.
Thank you, Rajesh. In fact, even Seema has mentioned, and Gagan was asking similar question, right? So yes, Gagan, since we are on this topic, so you can leverage your EBS volumes or snapshot for disaster recovery situation as well, right? So what you can do at a frequent interval, make sure you are taking the copy of the data which you are storing in your EBS, right? And make sure uh, you take the copy and place it in a different region, okay, so that if one region is impacted, you can quickly reuse those data which you have stored in a different region using the snapshot of EBS volume. Okay, so it's about knowing exactly in your application how the things are being stored, where the things are being stored, so that in such cases you can think about retrieval. Okay, so if you know that, oh, your application is using EBS and we were taking the snapshot at the regular interval, so you can always say, yeah, we have the data is intact. Okay, because ultimately whenever there is a disaster or there is any hack, etc., customer is more worried about their data, right? So this way you can ensure that your data is available in case of such situation as well.
Just to give you an example of what you're saying, Jyoti. So a few years ago, this big European bank called BBVA, it's from Spain, I think. They had a situation where their data center suffered a huge loss due to fire. Okay, now that's a very um, unnatural situation, but it happened. So what happens then? And it's a huge bank with so much of customer data. So fortunately for them, uh, they could retrieve everything because everything was backed up. Everything, as they call it in the storage world, they call it replication as a technique. So they replicated all their data. And like you said, I mean, it was because it was bank information. It was useful for them to store in block level storage. So I don't know if it was EBS or anything else, but all I know is that this is a very important use case. Disaster recovery, uh, just to avoid any sort of data loss, is a very important use case for, for us to look at.
Okay, guys. So over to demo. So I'm simply creating two instances, okay, and I'll choose a different region to tell you how I can copy data from one region, sorry, not region, availability zone. So how I can copy data from one availability zone to another using EBS volume, okay. Just a second, yeah. Okay, so for my first instance, what I'm doing is I am picking 1A, okay. Right now, no storage. I'm going for the default storage. I'll create a storage separately and attach that storage here. Okay. So this is my first server. So let me just write it as server 1. Yes, I need to open port 22 because I need to do SSH. So just server 1. Yeah. Similarly, let me go ahead and launch another instance, but this time I'll pick 1B. Okay. This is my server 2. Yeah. Meanwhile, this is coming up. Let's go ahead and create a volume. Okay. Let me first delete this. This I had created for my practice and I forgot to delete this because you'll be charged for it. Create. Now see here also you get an option, general purpose, SSD and all the types. I'm going for general purpose because I am not doing anything more here. Okay. So when I was saying your EBS, they are tied to a availability zone. So do you guys see now here I'm getting an option. Okay, which available, like this EBS is part of which availability zone. So I'm selecting 1A. Okay. I'm not creating a snapshot here. We'll create separately. Okay. Okay, let's name this as volume 1A. Okay. Okay, and now let's go ahead and attach this volume. Right now I'm not able to see the option to attach because my instances are not up and running yet. Okay. Yeah, hold on for a second. Come on, come on. Okay, it's taking time. I'm just waiting for the check to pass. So once I'll get 2 by 2, I'll proceed forward. Yeah, so since it's taking time, see, like when you have to store data, we have studied that S3 is cheaper as compared to your EBS, right? So if there is some data, which I know is that know that I'm not going to access it in 10 years, for example. So one option is to store it in S3 Glacier, okay? But with problem with this approach would be now I was not using it for 10 years. Maybe there is some medical record, okay, of mine, which I had done, right? So now, but there's some emergency situation and I want to frequently access that data to take the decision. Okay, think in that way, right? So now if I have to go ahead and retrieve that data, which is stored in S3 Glacier, it is going to take 10 to 12 hours for me, right? So what is the second option for us? The second option for us is to use EBS volume, because with EBS volume also, as I told you, the data, they persist. They don't get terminated with, for example, your EC2 instance, it got corrupted or you terminated it by mistake. Okay. So your EBS volume would still remain. Okay. So if you see, when I created these two EC2 instance, the root volume, remember the 8 GB volume which got allocated with my server one, it's present here. Okay. And I had that option delete on termination. So if I uncheck that, that means if I'll go ahead and delete my EC2 instance, the data would still remain. So in such case situation wherein if I want to access the data frequently, not frequently, I want to access the data quickly. I want a quick retrieval of my some old data. So you can go ahead and select EBS volume as your storage type rather than S3. So it's a trade-off between cost, time, and performance. Okay, so S3 is cheaper, EBS is costly, but retrieval time of S3 is more. Okay, but for EBS retrieval time is very less. Okay. Oh God, why is it taking so much of time today? Okay, done. Okay. Now what I'll do, Before attaching, let me just log in and show you now currently how my system is looking like. Okay, before I have attached my volume. So I need to share entire screen. Okay, now I can share my entire screen. Okay, so I'll go ahead and connect to one of my instance. Okay, so okay, so how do we connect? SSH key is already available. So okay, then the public IP address of this. Okay, so let's see the partitioning which is available with us. These are basic Linux command, guys. Okay, all these are temp. So see, this is the one which I got by default. This is my root volume, okay, or root drive where my operating system is stored. Okay, now I'll tell you the difference. Okay, let me, there's another command. Even this tells you like which drive is mounted. So right now I just have XVDA1. Okay, now let's go ahead and the volume which I had created, let's attach it to my EC2 instance. So this was the volume which I had created. Action, attach volume. See, the volume was in 1A. So in drop down also you will get only one server, the server which has same availability zone as that of your EBS volume. Okay, and what is the device name? SDF. And the name which you get here is not same what you see on the machine. Okay, so you have to be careful about that. Okay, now let's go ahead and run the same command. See, now you see another XVDF. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll first create a file system. Okay, again the command which I'm using, it's not anything related to AWS, it's basic Linux command. Okay, so and even in AWS if you search like make file available on device, so you have the file. Right now I'm going to create those file system and I'm going to mount all those stuff. Okay, so sudo mkfs and okay, so I'm formatting my XVDF. Okay, formatting is done. Now if I do okay, so you see this, right? Okay, now let me go ahead and mount it. So mounting is understand it. Now I'm creating those DEF drive. So what I did, I'm creating something like this. Say my data. Okay, and this my data, this my data would have the data which is present in my disk. Okay, and the name of the disk is XVDF. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll go sudo mount so in short, understand now whatever I'll store here, it would go into this drive or in this device. So there were two devices, remember, XVDF1 something like, yeah, so this was one drive XVDA and another is XVDF. So how am I going to distinguish whether I'm storing data here or here? So I have mounted this with this file system. Okay, so whatever I'll save here, it would go to this device. Okay, yeah, so let's go to the device. Okay, and create a simple file. sudo vi etc.txt. This is my first file. Okay. Yes, my job is done. I've created. Now I want same file in my second server. Okay. So what I have to do is, uh, this step is not required. I'm just unmounting it. Okay. Because I have to delete and take the snapshot, etc. So I'm unmounting it. Okay, done. So my server one has this file ttc.txt. Now I'll show you how I can copy this data from one server to another server. Okay. So I'll go to the volume, and what I'll do, I'll create a copy snapshot. Why I have to create a snapshot? Because now after taking snapshot, I can change the availability zone, right? So create snapshot. Okay, so snapshot is created. Let me name it my first snap. Okay, if I want, I can delete the volume also because data is saved for me now. Let's see if it allows me to delete. Okay, so to delete, first you have to detach, and then delete. Okay, it's taking some time. Never mind. So I'll come to the snapshot part. Okay, so my snapshot is ready. Now I'll go ahead and create a volume of this snapshot. Okay, so action, create volume from snapshot. Now here I get an option to choose the availability zone. So now this time the volume which I'm creating, I'm going to create in my 1B region. Okay. Yeah. So let's see. This is the one. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and attach this volume with my second instance. Okay, now let's go ahead and connect to my second server. I have to share again, guys. Okay. Yeah, I'm connected to my second server. Yeah. Let's do, which helps you to see the disk which is attached to your device. See XVDF. Okay. And why I see this? Because I've attached the volume to this instance. Okay. You don't have to do the step which we had done in previous for previous instance, wherein we had done the formatting of this disk and then we had created a file system using ext4. Okay, so that part is not required because I had already done that before creating the snapshot. Okay, so the only thing you have to do is you have to do the mounting. Okay, so let me mount this to my data 2. Okay, so what I'm saying is whatever is present on DXVDF, it should be made available to me on Okay. What did I do? Oh, the command is incorrect. It has to be mount. Okay, so let's go to this. See, your file is available. Okay, so this is how you can copy the data, right? From one availability zone to another availability zone. If you are using EBS for storing your data. So what would you do? From the volume, you'll create the snapshot. And again, from the snapshot, you'll create a volume. And this time when you will go ahead and create a volume, you'll choose the availability zone where your second instance was present, right? Yep. So I had only this as a lab. EBS is more about theory and learning about the use cases. I think this lab would have given you that insight on how why EBS is AZ specific and how can you copy data from one availability zone to another availability zone, and then the incremental snapshot, etc. Okay. So I'm open for questions if any. Any question, Gagan, Seema, Brijesh? Sorry.
None.
Okay. I see Seema joining us for the first time. Hi, Seema. Thank you for joining.
Let
Hope.
me let me
Yeah.
let me see if you can.
Hi, Jyoti.
Hello, hello.
Opening up. I've been sorry. I've been trying so hard to join your sessions. I've heard so much about it, but just not able to. Saturday, this time is like a peak time in our house to get things done. So finally found a day, and I'm like, yes, I have to attend today.
Hope I was able to make you follow, because all our sessions are connected, Seema. So if you've not seen previous session, it can become a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
She knows all these terms. She
Oh,
doesn't have a
wow.
problem. She doesn't have a
Okay.
problem with.
Then
She
she
knows.
can tell me whether I was saying
Yeah.
correctly or
She knows what S3 is, what EBS is, what
I've
EFS is.
been working with AWS for about more than 5 years.
not. Okay, okay.
And I know what Brijesh is trying to say. I've just done my CCP exam and passed it.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Great, great, great.
So yeah, I understand. But yes, you're explaining very well, which is really nice. I did it the hard way, which is go through each and every little thing to understand. I should have just joined Saturday sessions.
So so out of the four of us sitting in this session now, I'm the only one who is not a CCP. Shame on me. I should do something about it.
I think you should look at it the other way, Brijesh. This should be enough drive for you to go and get it.
Yeah. No, of course I have to.
So there is no shame there.
No,
Maybe
I
British with this sessions you could target a higher certification, isn't it? Not just CCP.
no. Let me first do the CCP exam and then think of the rest. But yeah, congratulations to both of you, Gagan and Seema.
Thank you. Thanks to Jyoti.
Gagan,
Congrats,
Gagan, your news got to me through Jyoti, of course. And
Yeah.
so yeah, very happy for you guys. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And,
Thanks
You
very
must be,
much.
Jyoti, you must be putting a lot of effort to be able to teach it this clearly and at this neat explanations enough to remember. And I understand that effort that needs to go into it. So appreciate it, really.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
and I say this in all the classes that I've attended so far. She's one of the finest teachers I have seen. She's not strict. That is the best part. That's the best part about her. Okay, but she has her own way of getting things done. She knows exactly what she needs to, or
She
where she
herself
needs.
is very disciplined. She makes the effort to, like do so lots of research and to teach us.
No, and
Like
also,
you could tell, when you're attending these sessions, like she had done some research and lots of research to prepare those sessions.
and when she's teaching, she's very patient with the students. I've had
Yeah.
some very silly queries in the past, and she's helped me with all of those. I'm sure Faiz also would agree with me, because we've asked some really stupid questions at times. But
No question is stupid. In fact, that
yeah,
makes me think. Today, somebody asked how is it important for a tester? And I was like, okay. Then something clicked on in my mind. So yeah, it gives you a different perspective. Also, those questions.
good. So thank you, Jyoti, for
Okay.
wonderful session. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you
Thank you.
next week. We'll see you next week with. Do you have a lab on this, or do you have?
No, this was like more of a. So EBS is more about the use cases and theory, etc. I think one lab was enough. I'll pick another topic, which is Route 53. That's an important topic.
That's
Okay.
an interesting one.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Then until the next session, have a good one, and Jyoti, take care of yourself. Feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Okay. Get
Okay,
rid of
thank
the
you.
cough syrup.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
Thank
you.
you. Thanks. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good weekend. Bye.